Hello, everyone. I'm glad to join you tonight. My name is Becky Kennedy, and I'm working here with Laura Beaudry, and we work for the Simcoe County District School Board. Laura will tell you a little bit about what she does, but my role is early years facilitator at the school board office, and so I get to work with some phenomenal educators every day. And Laura was one of those educators I got lucky enough to work with last year through a PLC. We started to look at some mathematical thinking and how we could capture that in our students and help to move learning forward. So it was really exciting for me to be a part of that, but I have to start off by saying that Laura is the real expert here and has done, she's rolling her eyes at me, and has done a lot of the hard work in getting ready for tonight.
Well, thank you. I'll take the misnomer of expert. I'm learning about the trajectories, and I'm a kindergarten teacher at Ernest Cumberland in Alliston, Ontario. And I want to just say that this has not just been my effort. As a kindergarten team, we have been working on this in different ways. I've just found a way that works for me, so I was going to share part of my journey tonight with you. To the next slide. Just to get started, we're not sure where you fit in with your knowledge level of the developmental progressions and trajectories in math. So if you could use the tools that Louise showed you to let us know how familiar you are. On the left is I've never heard of developmental progressions. Middle is I've heard about, but not unsure, and I'm using them in my daily practice on the right.
Ooh, a wide range.
That's yeah, great. So we have some other experts.
Yeah. Awesome, great. So we hope that we're able to push everyone's thinking this evening. Let's give you a couple of minutes. And it's okay if you've never heard of them, because that is something that we won't be talking about tonight for sure.
Definitely.
Awesome. Okay. Great. So a good mixture. Let's get started. So as with everything, we want to ground our work in the child and in children. And we really want to go back to thinking, why this learning for this child at this time? So we know that trajectories are one way of thinking. And we hope to present you with some research tonight and some reasons why this is a really effective way to meet students where they're at. And help them to move learning forward. So trajectories give us evidence that children generally follow natural paths or sequences of levels of thinking as they move forward. So that came from Doug Clements a few years ago when we started to learn about it and think about it. And it's been continuing to develop over time. When teachers understand where students are at, then we're better able to meet our students and help to support their learning and moving forward. And then we can build more effective mathematical learning environments. We can reach them where they're at, we can provide it in their play, and then we're using intentional instruction to help, again, move that learning forward.
And I see that Edward just put in the learningtrajectories.org website, which is really great, and we will touch on it later, but there is an OTF Connect webinar later this month on the learningtrajectories.org site, so we won't be going into a lot of depth tonight, but it is a great website, so thank you, Ed, for sharing that.
So to get us started, we're going to start with a video on early numbers and counting. This is by Graham Fletcher, who is phenomenal, and the video is, it's long, it's about 7 minutes long, but it's absolutely worth watching. It helps to ground our thinking in what are the actual processes that our students go through as they're starting to develop some understanding of numbers and counting. So Louise is going to put the link to that video in the chat box. We're going to ask you to click on that link when it's there. We're going to turn off our mic, and then we're going to return back in about, no worries, Louise, and then we're going to come back together in about 8 minutes. And if you can actually use the thumbs up button that Louise showed us earlier, then we'll know when everyone's done. So as soon as that Awesome, Louise. Thank you. So we're going to let you go to it. We'll probably come back together at about 7:48 once you've had a chance to watch that video. And if you can give us a thumbs up so we know that most people are done, that would be fantastic. Great. It looks like most people are finished or just about finished. So that's just an excellent video that reminds us about how the concepts build on each other. And I really liked the way that it was illustrated. I had no idea, no understanding about hierarchical inclusion until I had watched that video, and then I was like, oh, now it makes sense. So grounding our work again in what the math is and how the math works and how our students learn math is going to help us moving forward in noticing and naming that in our students. And thank you, Edward, for sharing that piece of information for us about the Learning Exchange blog that you're working on with Deepen. That's exciting, and for sure.
Yeah, definitely following that. That's amazing.
That's excellent. So again, when we think about the kindergarten program, we're thinking about moving from just simply covering the program to uncovering the learning that's related to the program. So we want to dig deeper than just checking off expectations as we go and saying that we've done them. How do we know that our students have learned them, and how do we know that this is the right time for our students when we're introducing certain concepts? One of the things that we've noticed, especially in reading, we've gotten pretty good at using our running records to point out those very specific things that our students need in order to help them move forward in their reading. I'm not sure that we've done such a great job of that with related to math.
Yeah, that's why this is so fascinating to me, because I have a reading recovery background, and so in reading I've always felt really confident knowing what the next step is for every child. But with math, it's oftentimes you're fumbling. What do they need next? And this just gives you a really clear outline of when you know where they are, what's the next step for each child.
Absolutely. So how do we do that? How do we make sure that we're moving from covering the program to uncovering the learning that's related to the program? And one of the big ways for us, that comes back to noticing and naming the learning. So we always go back and ground our work in our program document. What are the expectations that we're hoping our students will achieve by the end of the kindergarten program? When we know those expectations, then we're better able to notice and name those in our students. So noticing and naming the learning, it articulates what the children are doing, and it helps us to develop a shared understanding of what's being learned, of where our students are at, and where they're going next. It also makes the learning visible for our students. And then we're going to see the link to that when we dig a little bit deeper into the learning trajectories. So for example, in this picture, you might say something like, I see you've put down one green block and one blue block, one green block, one blue block. We call that a pattern. So that's the beginning of pedagogical documentation for us when we capture that learning. And then it gives students the language of success. Now they know what they're looking for. So it links really nicely into learning goals and success criteria, but in a child-friendly way. And again, when we ground our work in our program document, it comes back to the zone of proximal development. Things that our students can do with a little bit of help, how we're supporting them in moving forward. So it's an opportunity again to meet them where they're at. For example, when we see students in play, we know that they're working within their zone of proximal development. They're working at their just right level. And we as educators know when to step in and support that learning to help them move just a little bit forward, thinking about the next steps.
Okay, so we get to the learning trajectories. There seem to be some people who have kind of heard of them and some who have never heard of them, so I'll give you just a brief overview of the background. They're created by Dr. Doug Clements and Dr. Julie Sarema. And Doug Clements is considered like a major scholar in the field of early childhood mathematics. He developed these trajectories and written several books about them. Specifically learning and teaching early math, the learning trajectories approach. So they outline these trajectories in detail and also have tasks to do and activities. But I thought it was best for you to see Doug Clements explain what the learning trajectories are from his mouth. So we will put up the link for you. There it is, one more long video, we are sorry, but we really think these two videos are really integral for an understanding of just of the basis of what a trajectory is and what these look like in the developmental continua. So once that's up, you can go and have a look at that. It's about 8 minutes, almost 9 minutes, so we'll come back in about, 9-10 minutes?
Yeah, if you want to use the same strategy by putting up a check mark or a thumbs up when you're done. We know this one is long, but again, we really wanted you to hear it from Doug Clements himself, talking about the importance of trajectories and really getting that understanding. And it makes us feel good, Edward, that you're supporting us because you're the man.
Okay, good. You're worried. Don't be bored by our videos. They're fabulous.
Excellent. We'll see you in about 9 minutes.
Thank you. Okay, it looks like most of you are finishing up the video. So as said, in the words of the real expert, a definition of the learning trajectories. So basically, a complete trajectory has those three parts. It has a goal, and they are divided into many different areas of mathematics. We're going to specifically today just focus on counting, because we think it is a good place to start, and we can follow through. We have videos and things to show about how to move along the trajectory in counting specific. Each trajectory has a developmental progression of levels in thinking. So they move from one skill to the next in the developmental continuum. And there is associated instructional activities that you have to go with each level in the continuum. So there's a quote there from Clements and Sarema. To attain a certain mathematical competence in a given topic or domain, which is the goal, students progress through several levels of thinking, the developmental progression aided by tasks and experiences, which is the instructional activities, specifically designed to help students build the next level of thinking.
And I really like, Edward, again, we want to thank you for pointing out, it's really incredible it was incredible to me to learn about how much I didn't know about mathematics, and how much I had to learn, and the power I felt when I started to learn what I was looking for in students.
It's those look-fors, it's knowing what to look for. So we'll move through to the next slide, which is there's a picture of the book. So just for my personal experience, I first heard about them about almost 2 years ago when a coworker encouraged me to watch a webinar by Doug Clements. I was a bit overwhelmed. I find there's so much content packed into his trajectories, and they cover every strand of math possible. And they clearly outline each level, but for myself and the way that I learn, I needed to figure out how I was going to figure out where to place the students. In order to do that, I needed to unpack the language myself. Watching that video again, I realized he used the word unpack, so we're thinking on the same terms. And for me to do that, I kind of went backwards. I saw the trajectories, I started creating look-fors and questions of my own and developing like my own color-coded trajectories, and then I realized, oh, he's got all of this kind of on the website, which is great. But in order to find that out for myself, I needed to go through the process. So in my classroom, I've kind of color-coded for myself the different trajectories. So here's my trajectory for counting. I've stopped it at a certain level because I am teaching kindergarten. You do go to about age 8. For my purposes and for my assessment, and I am in kindergarten right now, I stopped it at age 6 to 7.
And you do get a copy of it, just so you know. A few slides from now.
Definitely, there's a copy of this. So I just color-coded it for myself, and you'll see why later because I'm very visual, and I have it on my wall, and there's a whole big system that I use. It's very complicated, but it works for me. So the goal in this particular trajectory is counting, and the developmental thinking are the levels of counting organized in the continuum there with the approximate age of attainment. So that's neat to know development-wise that it actually is associated with an age. If someone's asking if I create this enough, no, the trajectories exist. I cut and pasted it into a form to color code it. So I did not create the trajectories in any way or form. I just color coded them for my own purposes. They exist and they were created by Doug Clements. So just so to be clear on that, I did not create the trajectories. But I did color code them for my purposes. And then the instructional activities are the guided or focused tasks to attain the specific skills. My problem was, where do I place the kids? So what I did for myself is I read through each of the trajectories as I was starting kind of a unit or thinking about a different area of math, and I created a series of questions, look-fors, that I could administer to the students to see exactly where the starting place was. And these are pictures of just the resources I used for the different trajectories. For the counting, I used the dinosaurs and the 10 Darcy Dinosaurs book. Very simple. The patterning is at the top there with the pictures and the pattern blocks and things. And I created questions that I could use. I used materials in the classroom, easy to have access to, and I created questions that I could then place the students before we started, so I'd know exactly where I needed to teach them.
And Karen, yeah, you're right. So basically the trajectories are scaffolding. When we're thinking back to the zone of proximal development, scaffolding, right, is exactly how we get them to that next level. Mm-hmm. We support them in moving forward, and that's what the trajectories are designed.
Definitely. The difference is, for me, was finding out exactly where the starting point is. So meeting them in that zone of proximal development, instead of teaching everybody the same skill, thinking, well, where is Johnny right now, and what is his next step, versus, Jane over here, and not teaching the whole group the same skill when they don't need it at that moment. So it's really refined my teaching. So there's the website. You're going to hear tons about it. Edwards is the master. So it's a really great resource. Check it out. It's fabulous. About all kinds of great activities that you can use with kids at every level. It's wonderful. Yeah. Now we're going to...
So what we're thinking now, I had the opportunity to work with Laura and take some video of students in her class as we were trying to, we wanted to show you what that looks like, what the trajectories look like, and how we intentionally place students and how we were able to figure out where they were at. So what we're going to do now is we're going to put a link, or Louise, sorry, is going to put a link in the chat stream, and it's a very short video, 1 minute and 52 seconds long. we're going to ask you to watch that twice. And while you're watching it, we're going to ask you to think about what you see and hear happening. And then we're going to come back and work through a process together. As well, Louise is going to put in a link for the actual trajectories there, the link that Laura, the picture, sorry, that Laura showed you of all those trajectories. You're welcome to have the video going and open up the trajectory link in another website if you'd like as well, those trajectories for counting. But we're going to start by watching that YouTube video. We're going to ask you to watch it twice. So we're going to come back together in just after 3 minutes. And then we're going to walk through what we saw during that time. And again, if you want to use the thumbs up or the check mark button again to let us know you're done, we'll come back in about 3 minutes. All right, it looks like most people are just about finished watching it for the second time. Just while you're finishing up, Louise, there should be a second link there as well. So there's the activity one, but then there's also a Google Doc that's called Trajectories for Counting. I'm wondering if you can find that either on this slide or on the next slide, and if you don't mind adding that into the chat stream as well. Oh, great, Louise. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to walk through this one, and then we have another video for you to practice, seeing what you see in here, what do you think that means, now what, looking at the counting trajectory. So here's what we saw and heard. Davey's counting by 8, by pointing 1 to 1. He orally counted to 10. Attention to use his fingers. It was a little bit of a mess up doing 6 and 7 there, and he stopped. He was not able to produce a group of 5. We got mixed up. So he's definitely counting, but not able to produce. So what does that mean? Well, he's a counter of small numbers, which is step 6. We were questioning whether he could be systematizing maybe groups of 5.
So yeah, so one of the things when Laura and I were watching the video, which this speaks to the power of documentation, but also educators working together. So we were watching the video and having a discussion about it, and I said, oh my gosh, like, how he's systematizing here, even though he wasn't counting. So we were then talking about using several different trajectories with the exact same questions in order to help to pinpoint exactly where this little guy was at. So Louise just put the look for us as well in the chat stream there. So you're welcome to have that one open. You can kind of flip back and forth in between screens. But we did feel like he was on step 6, that counter of small numbers.
Yeah, and then, well, now what? So the next steps for this particular child would be producing small groups. And we had, like, a great way to get to that would be number 2 activities, number line activities, and there is a link, I think, that Louise already shared with a few activities. 2 of them are from the trajectories.org, and 2 of them are just 2 that I have used in my class, just very basic activities. So I'll have a chance to look at that, just as a way to then get to the next step.
Yeah, and one of the interesting things, I'll bring it up again later, and Louise, I actually sent you an email asking if you could put this article in at some point during this evening. But one of the things I was looking at just over the past couple of days was an article that was just released by Developmental about the importance of intentional instruction and how math and play is vitally important, but it also needs to be met with high quality instruction. And that's something that we're continuing to find the balance of, I think, within our new kindergarten program.
Yeah, there's definitely a gap.
Yeah, and so finding those research-based strategies really, really helps that. Oh, thank you, Louise, you're amazing.
There she goes.
That'll be great. As well, so I work with a team, this is Becky talking now, I work with a team of educators at the Ford office, and one of the things that they wanted to do in order to help them understand the trajectories was, again, grounded back into the work of the program document. So what they did, and it's not quite finished, we haven't actually given you the specific the overall expectations that it's linked to, even though they're written there, we just need to add that. We're thinking about intentional interaction. So what is the trajectory name? So what step are they on? What are some of those look-fors? But then going back to our program document, what are some of those intentional interactions seen during play, and how can we respond? How can we respond to that? And we'll come back and visit this again. But Louise is going to put the link to that document as well. So that contains all of the trajectories. We're going to focus on the counting one for today, but that does contain all of the trajectories, which help us to put that into practice.
Yeah. And Louise is going to be very busy because on the next slide she's going to link another video for us to watch. Thank you, Louise. This is another video of a student.
Oh,
taking over here. Sorry.
You're more than welcome to take over. So thinking about mathematics behaviors, we have another video. Same questions asked to a different student, and one of the, Louise's power went out. Oh dear. One of the most amazing things that I've seen is the power of questioning and how clear it is to see where a student is at on the trajectory. And I couldn't see that until I was in Laura's class
and
actually watching it happen.
I've heard that many times. You talk to people, I'm really passionate about it, and I talk to people until they see, when you do the series of questioning, or I'm sure the tasks that Clemens has as well, which didn't really speak to me as much as step-by-step for the way my brain works, but when you see where they stop and where they are no longer able, it's just like a wall has been put up all of a sudden in their development. It's like, okay, this is exactly where they are. It's very clear to see. You can explain it, but when you actually see it happening, it's a different story.
Absolutely. Louise, are you still able to put those links in for us? Hoping that she still has.
Oh, there, she's back.
Thank goodness. Oh, great. Okay. So what we're going to ask Louise to do now is put in another YouTube video of, again, another student. We're going to ask you, we're going to challenge you this time to take a look and use the writing tool to add some of what you're thinking. What do you see and hear as you're watching this video? Maybe what do you think it means? So if you're able to open up the trajectories document as well, what do you think it means about where they're at? And then what would you do next in order to support their instruction? So we're going to give you, the video again is only 2 minutes long, but we're going to give you about 5 minutes for this task so you can watch it a couple of times. So again, the trajectories for counting are there, and you can click on that YouTube link. And then we're going to ask you to add some things to the slide, and we'll come back together in about 5 minutes. So hopefully you've had some time to watch the video. Please feel free to watch it again if you want. And feel free to continue to add some of your thinking into the here's what, so what, and now what.
Comparison. Okay, it looks like there's some really great ideas here. A lot of us noticed that they're counting with one-to-one correspondence when counting out the 9 objects. And when asked to show, it is really interesting. I like that you noticed that as well. When they asked to show 9, they did not continue on from the 5. They created a separate group. I did not ask them to continue on, so that's just their way of thinking.
We're not going to show you the next video because of time, but something interesting is we actually made 3 recordings, and the third student, without being asked, actually did count on. When asked to make a group of 9, they went from 5 to 9.
And
so that was really
the answer, 8 was the number before, 10 was the number right after. And given a group of 10, they could then say, if I gave you 3 more, how many would you have? And they could just answer it. So they're at a very different level. But this student here, I think you're correct in guessing that they are at the counter to 10 level. And I think that it's evident because they are able to count. They did do the before and after number. They counted up. I don't know if you could hear the student counting to 8 quietly, but they actually interrupted me and said, I'm counting. I said, oh, I'm sorry. So they really were working on that. As a next step for this student, then, we would be looking at numbers larger than 10. So we'd be looking at the teen numbers for them. In comparison to the first video, you can see that this child is a definite producer. They can produce groups, not just to 5, but also to 10. So they're at a completely different level than the first video.
One of the interesting things that Laura and I talked about when developing the presentation, and something that we continue to talk about, which is really cool, is the purpose of asking these really specific questions. And I really liked what Laura was saying about being intentional about the questions we're asking, because the more we know about what we're looking for in our students, the better we're able to notice and name it, and then support them in moving forward. So we are going to move into looking at this in play as well tonight, but it's so important that you spend time, honestly, videotaping your students, spend time understanding where they're at, really thinking about what they're doing, because it is incredible to watch just how clear that becomes.
And the counting on again, yep, definitely, I saw the arrow. Thank you for putting that out. Counting on. But that does come later. The counting on in the trajectory is much later than teen numbers, which is interesting. So that's all part of, once you get familiar with the trajectories, you can kind of see where certain skills would be put in, which I didn't understand before. So it really gave me a better understanding of that. Okay, so we're going to move on to how does this then have implications for our programming as educators. The big change that I've seen is the amount of whole group versus small group instruction. Understanding and knowing the impacts you're making and using your time really wisely. When we went through this learning process last year with our team, my biggest observation was I wasn't wasting time. I wasn't wasting my time, and I wasn't wasting the students' time sitting and talking to a whole group. So I told you earlier that I had this crazy scheme of how I organize things on the wall, and here it is, my color-coded counting trajectory. And what I do is once I do kind of my pre-look-fors and figure out exactly where I believe their starting point is, I put their name on in the corresponding box, starting from the left top down in black. And as I go through and we move forward using small group instruction, we move them forward to the next step. The arrows are there to show that if I were to do a large group lesson at the top arrow on counting and producing numbers to 5, those 3 students in black are the only 3 right now that actually need that instruction. They're ready for it. That's exactly their zone of proximal development. So if I were talking to my 27 students, I would only really be meeting the needs of 3. further down, lessons on counting objects to 10, if I were teaching a large group lesson on, which I would have done in the past, counting objects to 10, I would be hitting nobody. Because nobody at that moment is in that spot of proximal development when we began. And if I were to do a lesson on counting...
Can you imagine you have 30 kids on the carpet and you're doing a lesson on counting objects to 10 and not one of your students requires that lesson? Either they're not there yet, or
it's too easy. Yeah. So there's the behavior aspect, which we'll talk about after, the lessening of behavior in your classroom. And if I were to do a lesson on counting and producing numbers to 10, which is plus the team numbers, I would be talking to 3 students that needed that learning at that moment in time. So it's why this learning for this child at this time. And that's the biggest thing that I've learned, really.
And Laura has it up in her classroom all the time.
All the time.
There's always room for movement with those students, but it's also really, really clear to know right away if you're seeing a behavior, boom, this is where my student is at right now, and this is what we're working on and what I'm watching for in them.
Okay. So thinking about assessment, I have started this year using the Google Keep, which I find really a fabulous tool. We're going to put the link up, I think. There's a link for, yeah. We don't have to watch it now. Please don't. We don't have time. But it's for later. So Louise, if you could put that link up for us, please, of how to use Google Keep in case you're interested. It is a program in the Google Suite that you can use. I use it on my phone. It's really easy. What I will do is I will go through my look-fors and make some Google Keep notes. You can label several kids at a time. So if 5 of the kids are working at the same level, you can tag them to it. And if you look at the slide on the picture on the right, I've got my, in the blue is my math, because I color code for the 4 frames in there. I've got their kind of look-fors, what they could do and what their next step was. And then at the end, I've got their post. And I've got the dates there so I can see in even the 3-week term kind of how far they've moved.
And it's really easy then when you're coming to that. So if you don't know about Google Keep, basically it's part of the Google Apps for Education suite of tools. And it's really a digital note-taking app. So it was really meant to start thinking about grocery shopping and making a list. That educators have discovered how powerful it is in being able to organize their documentation. It doesn't take videos, I apologize. It takes pictures. You can orally record your notes and it will just type them out for you. You can label your students. So what will happen is you'll get a tutorial, a YouTube link as part of your resource page at the end. And if you're interested in that, it really does walk you through step by step in how to create that.
I just realized that I missed something on the slide. I'm sorry about that. When we were talking about how it's changed the instruction. Sorry. So what now we do, because we have these groups there that are clearly outlined at different levels, we've moved most of our math instruction to guided group. In this way, we've got focus groups that are meeting the students where they are. It's purposeful instruction, meeting the needs of each child. We have less large group instruction in math and less behavior because we are not wasting the time of students or talking about what they are ready for. And we have a clear next step for each student and a clear learning story for reporting purposes later. Because if you can see later, at the end of our time doing that section of learning, we put their name in another color so we can see, and we'll always move them forward if we can go back to it again.
So thinking about growth and learning, right? It's really easy to see how far they've grown, and if that really is their growth and learning when we're thinking about demonstrating mathematics behaviors. And that becomes really clear too in their digital documentation. When they're able to start looking at, they date their notes, you can see the growth and learning over time, and your communication of learning is basically written for you. Really, all of those really specific examples.
We found it really great because they were all posted on the wall, so we could actually look at each of these trajectories and say, well, in this student, which area did they actually progress the most in? What was their key learning in math? Was it in the patterning, or was it in shapes, or was it in counting or addition and subtraction? Where was their main area? And it wasn't the same for all. which was really great to see very easily.
So it supports that differentiated absolutely piece too. And again, that brings us to the next part, right? Again, we're coming back to grounding our work is moving from just covering the program to uncovering the learning related to the program. And we want to really start to think about what this looks like in play authentically. So we do know that there's a balance of that intentional instruction, meeting students where they're at, but also spending time in their play. And that article that Louise posted a little bit earlier comes back to that authenticity and that students demonstrate mathematical learning. I think it was like once every 30 seconds in their play. It happens all of the time, and so as we learn to watch for that and react appropriately, we can really help to support that learning. And so one of the ways we've started to think about that is how we respond and challenge and extend learning. So one of the ways we've done it is we've sort of looked at it, now this is a linear model, and we would argue that it's actually circular, but it was really hard for us to make the circle work on slide. So please picture this as a circle in your head. But we're thinking about providing something like an invitation for learning. Now that could be some intentional materials we provide. These are really cool. They're called SUM blocks, S-U-M blocks. And actually, something really cool about them is that all the numbers correspond to a measurement. So perhaps you put that out on your table as an invitation for learning for students. Or perhaps you observe something in their play, which we're going to do in just a little bit. You put that out and you observed what the student was saying, doing, and representing authentically in their play. So maybe the student said, they're the same. As you're spending time with your students in play, and absolutely part of this is intentionally scheduling time into your day to spend time with play, observing play, responding to play with your students. So maybe you said, tell me more about that. Thinking, what does this mean when they say they're the same? They're just the same blocks, are they the same size? What are they referring to? So the student responds with, they're all this tall. That leads us to think about, to respond and think about what they're meaning. I wonder what they mean by they're the same, and I wonder how I can respond to that. And so based on that observation, we're going to intentionally interact to push their thinking forward, to respond and challenge and extend that learning. So maybe I want to understand what they're thinking about when they say that they're the same. So I respond with, well, what else is as tall as that block? Or maybe I'm thinking about the numbers that they're referring to. So based on that, I would have an intentional interaction the next day. Maybe I would provide something else to add to that. Maybe I would like to provide some scales for them to start to consider what does that look like in terms of weight. Maybe I'm going to provide some other measuring tools for them to begin to consider measurement in lots of different ways and how those things add up together. Maybe I would respond with, what would happen if I put the number 1 sum block beside you? What would happen if I put the number 10 sum block beside you? So thinking about how we can respond to students intentionally in their play, but also intentionally placing materials out that can help our students to challenge their thinking and help them to move forward. This is just another example. So these were some materials that were placed out in our classroom. We saw the hundreds chart was out there. Our students were interested in counting to 100. They were doing that every day, really counting by tens. But I observed a student placing blocks on the hundreds chart, just like this. And I noticed that they went from 1 to 10, and then I watched them go 20, 19. And so that really led me to consider why they were doing that. So I knew for sure that given the trajectories, I felt like the child was likely on step 8, the same as the student before, that they were a producer of numbers to 10, and that was based on lots of different things. But I also wanted to think about how I can move that learning forward, thinking about how I could respond, challenge, and extend. So I went back to my program document, and I really wanted to think about the expectations that they were showing and that I was seeing. So noticing and naming that learning for that child, something that they might do, and how we can respond to that learning. So one of the things I was thinking about was we could co-create a number line together to help them understand what happens after you get to 10. what number comes next? How do we know that 11 comes after 10? To help to solidify that understanding of numbers just beyond 10. So developing number lines together, adding those blocks together, helping them understand that 20 doesn't mean 11, and working towards that. So the last thing, challenge that we have for you is we want to show you a video about a student in play.
Several students actually,
yeah,
right. Different things. So the provocation was some the multicolored bears, which I know we have, every classroom has in Simcoe County, and just some cups, different colored cups on the table. And it's really interesting to see the play and the math that develops just watching what they're doing at the table and how many different things are going on at once. So if Louise could put up that YouTube link for us. It's only about a minute long. And watch it maybe 2 times. Yeah, to see what you think is going on. We'll give you some time to write into the comment boxes what you see, what you hear, what do you think that means, and maybe next steps for instruction.
So again, use those trajectories as well, but Louise will put up that YouTube link for you. And you do need to watch it twice,
yeah,
for sure.
There's a lot of things going on there. There's even toilets, they're flushing toilets and all kinds of things happening. So, yeah, please watch it twice so you can get a handle on everything that's going on.
And we will come back and double check, read the chat stream while you're watching that as well. I'm sorry, I had it stuck up high, so I didn't see that more people had added. So we will come back.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Lauren, Becky, I'm just wondering, I know people are watching a video, but it was short. If you're speaking, your mic's not on.
So we're not speaking. No, we're just hoping people. We figured people might need to watch it a few times while you're adding. So and I was just going to type that into the chat stream. So we'll give you maybe 2 more minutes if there's anything else that you'd like to add into that, thinking about that math in play.
Okay, so we've got some good ideas happening here. We've got a lot of math behaviors happening here, not specifically counting, which we have been looking at, but a lot of math behaviors we're seeing at the table. We've got the use of more and less here, you're right, sorting at the very end there, the length of bears in comparison, and the line does curve, so we've got in the now what there, saw the strategies for determining like more and less.
And I like how your now what's bring that counting lens back in. So if we're thinking about that, your now what's have brought that back in.
Yeah.
But Laura and I were talking about not letting that, so even if we're intentionally really focusing ourselves on the counting trajectories, not to let that stop us from seeing what learning is happening.
Because one of the points that Becky made up when we were working on this was someone's going to mention the spiraling, which is our big term right now. How are we spiraling our math in our classroom? We're using one unit. We're not talking about one topic. We're spiraling them all at the same time. And I'm not quite there yet. I was telling her I'm still learning, and I'm really trying to perfect my knowledge of the trajectories in each area, but the play is where I can then take these observations and spiral. I can extend their learning. Maybe I'm not doing it in with you know, pre-assessments and post-assessments and using it for the communication of learning, but I'm noticing it and I'm moving them forward in these areas all at the same time. So the play mixed with the intentional instruction and your extensions of that play are so important, and they work together to make the learning happen in all areas of math.
I love that. Yeah, and that's it just shows how much I know Laura and her colleagues are all the same way. Like that.
Yeah, they definitely are.
They're such learners, and so they want to become experts, but they're not letting them stop them from seeing the incredible things that are happening at other areas in the classroom. And sometimes that's something we struggle with as educators, is we forget. We get so focused on what we feel like we have to that we miss the learning that's already happening. And that's where we go from covering the program to uncovering the learning.
Yeah, and I know we have to move forward, but our scroll for the chat was moved up, so we hadn't seen the comments that were zipping through. So I just want to respond to one comment about why are the some of the names in green and some of the names in black. On that, should we go back to that slide really quickly, just so I can show? And the reason is when I do my look-fors or questioning to find out, I place them with the black. I then write their name again. When we finished for now, that unit or that area of study, we will go back again, of course, but when we re-enter again, then I know exactly where they are, and it'll just be in another color so I can very clearly see it on the wall. So I hope that answered your question. I'm really sorry that we missed that. We tried to see if there was anything else we missed. So thinking about the communication of learning. Using the trajectories and visually having them on the wall, thinking about where they started and where they are now, gives a really clear idea of what their key learning in math has been over the term. The growth in learning is actually right there in the trajectory. You start with the skill that they're at, which is their beginning point, and their growth is all of the skills they've attained to where the step that they end at, where when you're reporting. And the next steps are clearly outlined in the trajectory as well. So I find it made my reporting in math just so much easier.
And again, just a reminder that this is a journey.
Oh, definitely.
You've been working with Laura's been working with the trajectories, I think, for 2 years
Not
now?
quite. No, I introduced almost 2 years, but I really started last year getting into it. And everyone's doing it differently. My team is fabulous. I have some great coworkers that are also at different places in their journey. This is what's worked for me. But there's so many resources out there, so many resources, and going to Jeffrey's website, all of his...
And Edward.
Yeah,
oh my
Edward.
gosh.
Connect with Edward, because he's just fabulous as well. I would like to connect with Edward. Yeah, and just, you know, don't be intimidated. Just start small. My suggestion would be start with one thing. Counting is really great because it's such a key concept. Start there. Figure out kind of how you want to work it. If you want to do a question like I did, or if you want to use the tasks that are outlined in the book, which are great as well. And then just, oh, there he's giving you his email, so you can connect with Edward as well. He's also a good...
Yeah. And the power of knowing, of understanding the math, I did not realize how important that was. The power of understanding why we're doing what we're doing, and what we're looking for is just, we can't even describe how important that is, and how transformational that is in our practice, but also in how we support our students.
And just that understanding, and just practice, try something. Don't be afraid. I was afraid too, but I think that you can do it. You're fabulous educators, and you're here for a reason, because you want to learn. And the more we know, the better we are at helping our students.
So contact us at any time. We love to tweet. Laura posts some awesome stuff from her class. I post on behalf of our early years system, so if you are interested in early years learning, please follow us on Twitter. Email us at any point.
Yeah, and if you have any further questions and you want to email, or if you have any information about how I've kind of organized my questioning, how I got started, feel free to email, please. We would be very welcome to have conversations with you and connect. More minds are better.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for connecting with us.
Wow, thank you so much, Laura and Becky. That was amazing. Between being rusty and power outages, mostly I was just captivated by all the things that you shared, and I have a feeling that everybody else was able to feel pretty captured as well. And thank you so much for the session. And I think Syria is especially grateful for how deep you go and how many resources that you share so that people can just take all that back into their classroom and start using it. And we hope that we will see you both again on OTF Connects soon. I am going to just move our slide along here and make sure that you guys all have a chance to give us your feedback. I'm going to post that link in the chat as well. Your follow-up email, which will be coming shortly, will also have that. And of course, tonight's recording and all the resources will be posted to the resource page, and you'll get that link in the follow-up email as well. And there it is there too. Everything is already posted there except the recording. So thank you very much, Becky and Laura, for all the effort that you put into tonight's presentation. And thank you to all of you who are giving up some of your own personal time to further your learning. So thank you very much on behalf of OTF. Everyone, I hope you have a wonderful evening and stay in touch. Oh, I forgot one more thing. Many, many upcoming sessions. Some of these ones in the bottom half from March 20th on have just been posted, and there'll be lots more posted next week. And so stay tuned in your inbox and make sure you check out the other ones that are interesting to you as well. Thank you very much, everybody. Good night.